There you guys know it's recorded. So, and by the way, just because of that, if you have any questions that you don't want to talk about over the recording, that's completely fine. Just let me know and I can turn it off at the end and answer any questions that you might have. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and go through the presentation. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, there's a screen behind me, but then you should also be able to see a screen that I'm sharing with you. So you're able to see, tell me about you. Yes?
No,
No,
no.
you can't see, tell
Oh,
me
the
about
screen
you.
is sharing. No, I just see the one. I mean, I just saw you and the one behind you. Yes.
Now you can see it? All
Now, yeah.
right. Awesome. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the presentation. And at the end, if you have questions, we'll go ahead and do questions. But the point of this presentation is I'm going to walk through creating a resume that will help you to get to the next position that you're wanting to be in. This is kind of general information that really applies to anybody who needs to have a resume created. Obviously, depending on your industry, situation, years of work experience, that information is going to dictate, some of the things you need to include in your resume, but this is good practice for everybody. So what I'd like you to do is just to take a minute and fill out this information and put it in the chat if you can, just to help me get a better understanding of what it is that you're looking for, what your specific needs are. And that does help me to provide, some specific information that will be more helpful. So if you can try to send, I know chat, if you're on a phone, chat can be a little challenging. So if you prefer to just talk about some of this towards the end or even here at the beginning, that's okay. Let me know. But if you can, put it in the chat so that I can kind of keep it in front of me. So what kind of work are you looking for? Or do you need your resume for a different reason? If it's like I know that sometimes for a volunteer, for nonprofit, for contract work, for something related to education. What industry are you in or do you hope to enter? So if you're looking for a industry that is, if you're looking to change industries, that's an important thing to know. And then what concerns do you have about your resume currently? So, okay, Holly says that she's writing resumes for other people. And Aline, you're in the technology industry. Awesome. Okay, so, and you're talking employment gaps, and you also sent me some additional things you wanted to talk about. So that's completely awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, good. Well, that's great. That helps me to understand where we're going with this. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to take a minute just to talk about the COVID-19 situation. A lot of people, when they come to me, I've just talked to like 3 or 4 people today who are saying, it's so hard with COVID-19. There's people are getting laid off. Does it really even make sense to look for a job right now? And what I would say is that you should not pause your job search. And if you're working with other people, also tell them to keep going and keep submitting their applications because there are lots of people that are still hiring. And even for some people have found jobs faster than in the past when I worked with people outside of COVID, because a lot of organizations are doing things differently now. So they're trying to do more telework, they're trying to do more customer service, they're hiring more people in those areas. So I've even had a couple of people that have gotten offers within a week of submitting their resume to certain companies. So I mean, don't pause. Of course, you always want to think strategically, but there's a lot of people hiring now. Technology is one of those industries where there is especially a lot of people hiring right now. If you're doing a career change, it almost may be better for some career changers because in the past, a lot of companies had very rigid hiring requirements through HR. You had to have this, you had to have that. You can't work from home, even though half of the company is remote. There were a lot more rigid situations in place that now a lot of companies are relaxing on some of those rigid situations or requirements that didn't seem to make a lot of sense in the first place. But you know, they're relaxing on them. So if you're searching for a different job, it may almost be better for you at this time. So it's really a good time to keep looking and keep going. So what are the basics of an effective resume? Well, it depends obviously on your situation. You know, what you're going to put in your resume is really dependent on your experience, your career history, your education, what you're actually going for. All of those things are very important. So I can't say that everybody absolutely has to do this, that, and the other. But what I can tell you is that formatting and design, clear content, and measurable results are three things that will make your resume stand out from the rest if you can focus on those three things. So the first one is formatting and design. And a question I get all the time is design really as important as content? And in many cases, that answer is no. But if you're writing a resume, the answer is yes, because most times your resumes are going to go through the applicant tracking systems, which we're abbreviating as ATS. And if your resume isn't formatted according to the ATS system, the system's going to reject your resume. And so you may not even land on the HR manager's desk. So you really need to make sure that you are using those standards, and we're going to go into them in a minute, to make sure that's always there on your resume. Otherwise, you don't even know if your resume is making it to where you're intending it to go. If you submit a lot of resumes through like Indeed or Career Builder or ZipRecruiter, any of those places, and you're getting a lot of automatic rejections, then it's probably an ATS issue. And probably resume is not even making it there. So if you're getting lots of automatic rejections, especially if you're qualified, you need to look at your formatting. Now, effective formatting also makes it easier for employers to look at for key information. We've all heard the statistics. It's like 7 to 30 seconds that an employer is going to give your resume for the first look. And you don't want them searching for information. You want those headings to stand out so that they can quickly see why you're qualified. And really, every resume, like I said, is different because everyone needs a strategy. So if you're changing careers, you need a strategy. You need to be able to emphasize what skills are going from industry A to industry B, and your design is part of that strategy because it's going to determine, do you emphasize your years of experience up front, or do you emphasize your degree, or do you emphasize a specific contribution? Your design can help you. You know, maybe you don't have all the required or the recommended requirements for a position, but maybe you have something that's even better than those because you have, you know, some unique experiences that align with that organization. Your design will allow you to emphasize the things that are most important. So let's look at some examples of design. So a good design is clear. You don't want to get too fancy. I mean, some people, they have these resumes. They're like, you know, everybody has seen Legally Blonde, and she has her resume on scented paper and all of that. Too fancy is not good. You want to make sure it's always ATS compliant, and consistency is really important. So, you know, if your job titles are always going to be in caps, they're always in caps. If they're always going to be in one font, you keep one font throughout your whole resume, maybe two if you're like a design person and, you know, you really want to go crazy, but you really have to be consistent because it shows a lack of attention to detail, and that lack of consistency can also throw off ATS systems. We also want to almost always use a system of bullets and text blocks. So sometimes you'll see resumes that only have bullets. In some industries, that's still okay, like maybe like nursing or other industries where there's not a whole lot of achievements. It's mostly like day to day, the same thing you're doing, you know, that's the bulk of the job. But for almost every resume, you want to use paragraphs and bullets. And I'll go into some examples of that in just a minute. And so let's look at a couple of examples of what to do and what not to do. And you're going to have to help me to, if you see my screen. So do you see the resume that just popped up? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So this is an example of what not to do. Okay, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? But this is not ATS compliant. First of all of these graphics here, they're not going to work very well with an ATS system. They're not going to know what to do with it. You want to avoid graphics in your resume. You can have graphics sometimes if you want to like have a resume that's not going through ATS systems. So a lot of people like to have one specifically that they bring to an interview that's more like a portfolio, or that they're giving to a connection. But to be safe, you want to avoid graphics. So all of this stuff here and all of these things, the layout is also just not a compliant with ATS systems. But the problem also is there's just no information here. Like, it looks beautiful, but there's not enough for a hiring manager to really be able to say, wow, this is, interesting. We also never want to include a picture on a resume unless, of course, you're applying to be a model. And sometimes in other countries, they do want you to have your resume or picture on the CV. But in the United States, you never want to include a picture on a resume, because almost all companies have non-discrimination policies. And if you include your picture on a resume, it could possibly be said that someone was possibly discriminating on you because of how they interpreted your background to be. And because of that, many employers will actually throw out all resumes as a rule that use pictures, because they don't want anyone to be able to make that accusation. So don't ever put your picture on a resume unless it's specifically requested, if you're, applying for some job where you have to look pretty like a model or something like that. So there's and if anybody knows I have a friend that a little kid friend of one of my little kids that wants to be a model. So if anybody actually knows of anyone hiring, let me know and I'll pass it on to him. But I give another example of what not to do. And this is an example of a resume that actually came into my company. So can you guys all see that with the big original stamped on it? Okay, awesome. So this is a resume that came into my company. Obviously, I made it anonymous and everything, but this is what it looked like before. And it's kind of just one of those boring, here's the information, kind of, 90s style resumes. So in the 90s, this was perfectly adequate. But the thing is, in the 90s, there wasn't as much competition, and we don't have the type of software systems that we do now. So the issue here is that the information is there, but I have to hunt for it. I don't know what this person's strategy is. I see an objective there, but nothing is popping out. There's also a lot of focus on what this person did on a day-to-day basis, but not a lot of focus on what they've achieved. And there's a lot of inconsistencies. If I look down here, I see planning and writing, and then over here, down here, I say performed high intensity. So, there's a lot of an inconsistency with verb type and all that kind of thing. So this is an example. This is what I see a lot of times what comes into me as a resume writer. It's that perfectly adequate, came out of the Career Center from my school, or came out of a resume book resume, or I used it 20 years ago, or I used a Microsoft Word template. And that's what comes into me. So again, it's not, terrible, but it's not what we really want to do. Instead, here are some examples of what we do want to do. So this is the revised version of that particular resume. And what we see here is a lot of differences in terms of ATS. We see some focused to some area or some headlines here, or some page or area breaks here. These are really good for ATS because it's not only clear when you quickly look at it, but it's also clear when you when the ATS system scans it, where I'm going to find information. So I can really quickly hone in on the important information. You'll also see that we're highlighting, we have a little bit of more of an objective. We have a career profile that allows us to emphasize the most important information here. This person has 10 years of experience, has a bachelor's degree. So those are the things that, she wants to emphasize, and that's done here. You also see that we have a system of paragraphs and bullets again, where the paragraphs are more your day-to-day, and the bullets are more of the key accomplishments or the things that we've achieved. And then the areas of expertise, which is really good for ATS systems as well. So you've heard people talk about keywords, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's a great place to get lots of keywords in, is that area of expertise. Another really good thing about this resume is it's super easy to change for multiple positions because we're going to leave almost all of this the same, but we're just going to make changes here where we emphasize the things that are more important to that particular job. So instead of rewriting your entire resume for every job you want to apply to, you're rewriting just a small section of it, maybe taking a half an hour instead of 2 to 3 hours to rewrite your resume, so it's a lot more efficient as well. Oops, did I stop? I stopped screen sharing. I didn't mean to do that. Hold on, let me go back. All right, can you guys see that now? Okay, so this is another example, and I'm going to talk to you about this person a little bit. So again, this is not her real name, but this is a real person. Person came to me, and she had owned her own business for many years as a financial advisor. And she said, you know, I used to be a teacher, and I used to be a homeschooler. And I would like to use this resume to actually do some consulting work for this other company in financial advising, but they really want someone that has an education background, because they want someone who can really clearly explain to people all of these financial products. They work with a lot of younger people that are probably brand new to investing, and they want someone that's really approachable and can be a great teacher. But she said, I haven't had a resume in over a decade. You know, I've been my own boss. And so we worked together and we pulled out this example, which this is an example of an extended career profile, which is really good if you're making a transition to a new industry, or if you're experienced, you have to focus on your transferable skills, because each of these check marks, we've kind of highlighted a specific skill that relates to that particular need. And then we're a little bit of reducing the experience. You know, we have some different headlines here, and we also have an early career highlights that's emphasized, as well as an extended education section to emphasize those things that she needed. So this is where I say layout and format can be strategy for you guys. You know, your layout here is far different than this layout. This is something that's a little bit more traditional that would go through an ATS. This I would make some changes to if it was going to go to an ATS, not too many, but like I probably wouldn't use this bar here, and I would probably change the names of the headers here. But this one wasn't going through ATS. We knew who we were going to be communicating with. So that's an example of how, you know, your structure and layout is really part of your strategy. So that's the first area. And before I go into clear content, I want to ask if you guys have any questions about layout. I see a shaking head. Nope. All right. Great. So let's go into clear content. So your resume is your first impression. It's like a dating profile where I say you don't have to tell your whole story on your dating profile. You know, you want to just tell like the highlights about you. You don't need to say like you have a second cousin named Sam or anything like that. And a lot of people though on their resume, they feel like they just have to include every single thing. And I think that, you know, in sometimes that's a good idea because you don't want to forget anything. So that's why I say have a version of your resume that's just for you. Keep it with you where you include all the details so that when you're ready to write your resume, you can write it, you know, pick from all of those details to craft the best possible version. But that for me version doesn't need to go out to the public, just like your journal isn't going to be on your dating profile. You're going to hang on to that. You want that information, but you're not going to put it out there for the world. And it's the same thing here. So we also want to make sure that we're presenting information in a way that makes sense and isn't confusing. So if you have overlapping jobs, try, if at all possible, combine them if they're similar, or omit certain jobs. You do not have to put every job you've ever had on your resume. Omit those so that there's not overlapping dates, because that can throw off ATS and it can confuse hiring managers too. Even though we're in a world where almost everybody has a side gig, it's confusing to resumes. It's confusing to the resume systems, and some hiring managers don't like it. So avoid that when possible. If you have gaps, you want to try to minimize them by removing months if possible. And then you can also fill them with other things like education. You can actually put that on your resume as a job. Volunteer work is the same way. And you can also use the design strategy that I mentioned earlier to highlight things of more importance and push down the gaps so that they're not as prominent. You also want to avoid irrelevant information and also information that's just not what we do in the United States in terms of job searching. So I know like in a lot of other countries, you'll need to put like your driver's license number and if you're married or not. In the United States, we just don't care about that stuff. We just want to know if you can do the job. So you don't need to include that. Don't spend a whole lot of time trying to explain things on your resume. That just makes it more complicated. So mergers, acquisitions, there are some ways that you can quickly explain that. If it's a merger, you can say in parentheses, formerly, and then another name. If you're self-employed, I would say, you've got a couple of ways to deal with that. You either just put your company down. I have an LLC on my resume. I just put my LLC, and that, get this, don't put owner, don't put founder, don't put manager, put what you do. So for mine, I haven't had I was a professor forever, but that's not a real job. I haven't had a real job in years, but on mine, I put something like, resume writer, career coach, communication strategist. Do something like that. If you're self-employed, if you put owner, founder, whatever, first of all, it's not keyword searchable. Second of all, a lot of times hiring managers have an issue with self-employed people because they think that, you're just doing this until you get a little bit more money and then you're going to go back to your business. So it's better to avoid it, again, unless you're particularly applying for a job that wants someone that has had some entrepreneurial experience. So, you just don't want to put too much explanation stuff on there. Avoid that when possible and explain it in the interview. And then let design be your friend. Like I said, use the design to help you clarify your content. Pick a design that's going to allow you to bump up the most important things, highlight the most important things. This is also really good if you're going back to something that you used to do in the past. So, I work with a lot of people who've been out of the workforce for maybe 15, 16 years at home with kids or, doing something else. And maybe they were, a nurse for 15 years, or maybe they were a financial planner for 15 years. And then there was a big gap. Well, what that allows you to do is it allows you in some design aspects to use those check marks like we looked at earlier to highlight past stuff so that people don't have to wait till they get, to the bottom of your resume to read the stuff that's most relevant to the job you're applying for. So let design be your friend. Okay, so I have the same examples that I had before where we can look at really quickly. It's going to let me do it. Some examples of clear content. So again, we want to look at this here. We have, it's really clear which position is which. We don't have to, we're not throwing in a bunch of extra stuff there. And whereas here, see, we're going back to this one, that content isn't very clear. Like we're not really quite sure where all this information goes into play. That design here doesn't give me a clear, this is my content. So those are some examples of that before. And then so we'll go on to measurable results, which is super important. So no fluff. ATS systems and managers are really good at smelling that stuff out. So, and it's so funny because like when I was a professor, I'd have students that would turn in papers that were like 10 pages long and I'd ask for 2. And I'd be like, I asked for 2. And they'd turn in 10. They said, aren't you proud of me? I turned in 10. I said, no, now I have to grade 8 extra pages. And why do I want to read extra work? It's the same with your resume. More isn't always better. In fact, you should try to be as brief as possible. But the 1-page rule is no longer a thing. 2 pages is what most people have. If you're in IT or something like that, going on to 3 is acceptable. So anymore, don't let people tell you 1 page or nothing. But you want to demonstrate your effectiveness with specifics. It's just like if you've ever been a writer and you've heard someone say, show, don't tell. Don't say the guy was mad. Show that he's stomping out of the room. It's the same thing here. Don't say, hey, I have great communication skills. You know, does the paper prove that? It does. You know, that paper is not proving great communication skills. But if you say something like resolved conflicts among team members and expedited customer service, that shows that you were actually able to use your communication skills to resolve these conflicts. So give specific examples of what you've been able to do. So think about how you added value to the organization, clients, and goals. Write about your results always from the perspective of the employer. Not just, I did this, I did that, I got a this award. Great. What did you get the this award for? Instead of saying, you know, I got an Employee of the Month award, recognized with Employee of the Month award for improving customer service survey scores by 27%. Or if you don't know what percent, improving customer service scores. That's fine. But we always want to try to talk about our achievements from the perspective of the employer, because that's who's going to be reading it. So it's not just all about my skills, my achievements. It's about how it helped them move forward. Whenever possible, use numbers. ATS likes numbers. And so that's good if you can. Money saved, time saved, number of people served, percentages is great. Sometimes using percentages over numbers is helpful if, like, you were in, say, a really large company and you're moving to a small one, or a really small company and you're moving to a large one, where if you say like $10 million, well, depending on who you're talking to, that's either a whole lot of money or not anything at all. So, you know, if you use percentages, instead of saying I increased sales by $10 million, I increased sales by 72%. Well, 72%, 72%, no matter what way you shake it. So sometimes picking those things are helpful. If you can't use numbers, which is okay, some jobs are more numbery than others, then you can use specific details. The importance is that you want to avoid the fluff factor. So let's go back here to this original, and you'll see that this is mostly just kind of general information that you might get from a job description. Planning and writing support plans, monthly review of treatment data, liaison between individual programs. These are things that are done, right? Now let's move over to the revised. We see avoided client discharge and subsequent placement in long-term care facility result by working diligently one-on-one with client to identify and solve medical problems. How they did it. That sentence structure is really important. Start with the result, how you got there. So here we have a specific, you know, instead of just I wrote support plans, it's a thing I did, here's a specific incident. Here again, selected as interim home manager because of primary experience and excellence. And we're not just saying, hey, you know, I got promoted, great, but you're saying prior experience. You know, that's a thing that demonstrates this is why they selected me. See how it's from their perspective and not yours. So sometimes it's just a little bit of tweaking. Sometimes you have more content there, sometimes you don't. But if you put it in from the perspective of the employer, it's helpful for them to understand. All right, so, and I just got through the examples. And so that's pretty much it. We have covered, going back to present, we've covered design, and we've covered clear content, we've covered measurable results. Those are your 3 areas that you want to focus on. So I'll go ahead here and open it up for questions on anything, and I can go back to another slide. So what questions do you have for me? No questions? There's got to be questions. Hi.
Hi. Okay, I really like some of the tips. I guess to clarify a little more, I know you work on my resume personally, and my husband's in the past, and I think it makes sense now with the numbers. It seems like you know, to be more specific with the job, not just like, oh, I did this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, why did you do that? How did you? What was the I guess the benefit to the company going from that point of view? So that was really helpful.
Right. The result, the end result is so important. You know, anybody can say that I do whatever it is for my job. I enter things into spreadsheets, or I design programs, or I manage whatever. Anybody can say that, but you can do that poorly, or you can do that well. And your result shows that you did it well. So we always want to start with the result whenever possible. Let's see. Holly, any questions from you?
Yeah, I had a client a few months ago, and she wouldn't allow her address or her phone number to be on her resume. She only wanted her email. Would
Mhm.
that be something the automated system would kick out?
So I would agree with her on her address. I would not ever put your full address on a resume. Even federal now, that federal used to want, the name of your first child and your dog. But now, even on a federal resume, they're not requiring you to put a full street address. Sometimes through USA Jobs, you will have to enter it there. But I would agree with her on that because of such a privacy concern. If someone has your address and your phone number, they can call and get information about a lot of accounts that you might have. So I'd agree with her on
Okay.
that. Now, phone number, I would say that you definitely should have your phone number. Many employers are still calling rather than emailing. So my solution to that is to recommend a Google Voice number. So if you're
Okay.
not familiar with Google Voice, it's an app where you can set up another phone number that can ring to your phone and also will send text messages and emails to the app on your phone or to your email address. So even if
Okay.
your client does not want the phone ringing all the time or whatever, just have it go directly to voicemail and then she will get an email with whoever called with a transcription of the voicemail.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
ATS systems can kick it out if it doesn't have a phone number. Now they won't always, because it depends on how they put it in. If it's one of those situations where you have to put in your resume and then you have to basically rewrite everything that was on your resume.
Mhm.
By the way, if you format it well, sometimes it'll pull it over a lot easier for you. But if you have to put your phone number in there, that's okay. But what she's also doing is like closing herself down to recruiters, and for any type of state or federal position, they're going to kick anything out that doesn't have a phone number.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you put the city and the state though, or no?
You can put city and state. Yeah, a lot. I still recommend city, state, and zip. The reason for that too is if you have a recruiter like that, if your resume is getting passed along to various recruiters, most of them have territories that they cover. So that way, it'll get in front of the right person. But again, you can also put the nearest metro area if you don't want to actually put where you live. So I live in Chesterton, Indiana, which is 40 miles outside of Chicago. I could put Chicago if I really wanted to be careful about it. But of course, that brings up another point, and it's also relevant to your LinkedIn profile. Like if you're going to actually put your city, or you're going to put the greater Chicago area, greater Detroit area, whatever. It depends on like what kind of position you're looking for. If you're putting that you're in greater Chicago area and you're actually in Indiana, like some places will say we only want Indiana workers because they're getting certain benefits. So it's the same kind of thing with like any place where you're at. Think about those things before you choose, I'm going to put the nearest city or I'm going to put my actual town. So,
Okay.
yeah. Any other
Thank you.
questions I can answer for you guys?
I guess just the ones that I mentioned about I guess the employment, and also like a lot of these online positions, sometimes they want, it's not really a cover letter, it's just a like, why me, big
Okay.
600 character, something like that.
Yeah. I say with your cover letter, just have a good section in there that you can copy and paste in there, and then that's all you have to do. It's like two birds, one stone. Because I have noticed that, it's too short for a cover letter. So I always just say brief version of your cover letter is good for that too. Yeah.
Well, this has been very helpful. I want to thank you for your time
Yeah, no
and
problem at
energy.
all. I am hosting these classes on Tuesdays through the month of November for sure. So if you want to come back, if you want to invite anyone, please have them come on back. I'm going to try to get in touch with the person that was here and then left. There were like actually 3 other people registered for the class. So I'm sorry about that. It was really weird. I don't know why Zoom made its own meeting room for me, but um, I will, but if you know anybody, you can feel free to send them here. And then I believe I have both of your email addresses, but if you, I mean, I know Elaine, you're already on my email list. And Holly, if you want to be on my email list, I can
Yes,
put you
please.
on that as well. And then I do have some emails that'll be coming out too with like additional information on that. So you guys can send people the links for the Facebook or for this class are on Facebook through December. So come back, send people, and let me know if you have questions. I'm always happy to answer them.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you so
All right.
much. Really appreciate it. This was really helpful.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.